sometimes it's hard to think about the future because you're living in the present, and why do I want to do that? That's going to inconvenience me, or I don't like that. But I think it is our responsibility to think about the future and what it is we want to be, because now is our time to build that.
Welcome back to the Talk Midland podcast. My name is Logan Ricchetti with Modern Realty, and today I have the mayor of Midland.
Hello.
Thank you for being on the show.
Well, I was just tickled that you invited me, and I'm glad to be here.
Well, I have watched your leadership for many years, and it's great to finally meet you in person and get to know you a little bit. We've had a lot of fun already in the studio here. Let's talk about Midland and what makes Midland a community of choice.
Well, let's talk about what a community of choice means, because I think it's important that we define that for people. So a community of choice is a place where people want to live and businesses want to locate. Well, you can't do just one thing to make that happen. You have to do lots of different things because people have different needs and desires. So it's really important that we focus on all different areas in our community that we focus on, economic development, education, infrastructure, social services, lots of different things. So we have lots to focus on. And let me just say this, the city is a partner. We do not do it all. But Midland wants to be a community of choice. And in today's world, I think that's incredibly important because one of the major issues that I think everyone is facing is that it's a struggle for talent. And we want to attract talent to Midland. And so we want to be the place where people want to live.
Well, how do we do that? How are we doing that, and how do we continue to do that?
Okay, well, I think certainly one of the ways that we do that is with our placemaking. And placemaking work in Midland started a long time ago because it takes a long time to do that, for sure. And, not everybody has the same taste. And what's important to one person might not be important to another person. So biking, bike trails, sidewalks that you could ride your bikes on might be important. But if you just look at our downtown and see what has happened there since we created that amazing new space downtown. And people weren't excited about that. Oh, why are you spending dollars on that? We got lots of support from the community, lots of grant dollars to make that happen. And in fact, the majority of that happened with those dollars. And so a lot of it did not come out of taxpayer dollars. And people now love downtown.
Yes.
And certainly, that's a person, a downtown, Main Street is our front porch. We want our front porch to look really great. And that is our oldest business district. And our second oldest business district is Saginaw Road.
Wow. So
back in 2007, we brought, not the city, but a group of people came together and brought Fred Kent, who is the leader in placemaking, to Midland. And he, we divided up into groups, and they were asked all different kinds of questions. So I think the city was divided into maybe 7 different areas. So the downtown was one part of it. The East End was another part. The mall area was a part. The Circle area, was a part of it. And so we looked at what are 10 things? You'd have to identify 10 things you could do to make it a better place. So we've been working on that ever since he came back in 2007. And interesting, at least from my perspective, I was recently at the Michigan Municipal League, which is the group that we belong to as a city, at our annual conference. And Fred Kent's son is now leading the charge for him. And he was, one of the speakers there, which was great. It was great to hear what he had to say.
Well, all that leadership and all that vision that you and others in our political leadership have culminate in things like the Modern City Master Plan.
It does.
It's the Midland
City Modern.
Yeah, Midland City Modern. And this just came out, and this is my copy.
It is your copy. And I'm so happy to give that copy to
Thank you.
So this work is done by our Planning Commission.
Okay.
Which is a wonderful group of people, and they have been working on this for a long time. It started out with people were walks around the community. So there were different walks. Like I did one in my neighborhood. I attended it. What did we like about this part of town? And we talked about liking the tree cover, about the street, not having such heavy traffic, things like that. So there were little conversations like that that were happening, and that's how it started. Then it went on to the next steps, and that was all handled by our planning commission. And this year, it even went into the schools. They met with second graders. I met with a Bible study group, and we did this really fun project with them, a pizza in a box exercise that came out of our library. They helped us figure out, good ways to get conversations going. And, how do you choose what you want on a pizza? Well, how do you choose what you want in your community? So it was a fun conversation with, young people. So we had a lot of meetings that people could attend to provide input. They came up with a draft master plan. They presented that, again, more input. And this is the final copy.
Well, this is extensive. It's very comprehensive. It's very forward-thinking, and it takes a tremendous amount of effort, energy, contribution, and time to put this together. I read these. These only come out, every 10 years?
Every 20.
20 years.
20 to 25 years.
Holy moly.
This will guide our planning for the future.
Yeah. And some of the things that I noticed in here, because from the real estate perspective, I'm always looking at zoning changes. And zoning changes reflect priorities of the city, right? You look at how you want distribution of, people where they live and how much and how few and how heavy and dense and where, industry goes and things like that, where you want to have commercial development and where you want to kind of let things be more,
right.
Parks and things like that.
That's why people go to college, to study planning, because there's a lot involved in that.
I took a lot of grad school classes in planning. It wasn't my jam, but we have so many engineers here that are brilliant at being able to look down at the overall landscape and decide, hey, this makes sense. We should do this. And then there's so much collaboration that goes into this. This is something that we all should be very proud of. Yes.
I think we are very proud of our staff and very proud of our planning commission. They spent a lot of time making that happen, and it's readable. Mm-hmm. It's it's pretty clear, and it's comprehensive.
Now, when you put something together like this, there's always multiple opinions, multiple viewpoints, and not everybody agrees with everything all the time, just like everything else in life. How does the city and how do the leaders balance all the input and try to come up with the best plan?
I think we all have our own way of doing that. Mm-hmm. And I think that, city council, our job is to provide vision for the future. And our staff, executes that and brings all of that, back to us. They come certainly with a lot of ideas and the education to understand those things that maybe we on council don't always understand. Doesn't mean we always agree with them, because sometimes we don't agree with them. Mm-hmm. But we have a very professional staff. Let me just say that. So our responsibility as a leader is to be educated on what the needs are, educated on, what this would, what it means for the future, what it means now. How, you have to look at the cost. Can we really do this? There's a lot that goes into it. And you have to listen to the people. But the people don't always understand everything that goes on into a project.
Sure.
So that's really our responsibility to do that. And sometimes, people don't like the decisions that we come up with.
And that's just part of it.
That is part of it.
And, a lot of times, like you mentioned earlier, when somebody doesn't see the vision necessarily at the beginning, once it comes to fruition, then they look back and say, wow, that really was a great idea. We really do like this.
Yes. Yes, that happens. Now, I brought this beautiful quote. It's an old quote, but I love this quote. And I can't quote it from memory, so I have to read it to you. And it's, it was from Edmund Burke, and it was from the 1700s. And he says, your representative owes you not his industry only, but his judgment. And he betrays, instead of serving you, he sacrifices. Wait, I didn't say that right.
Okay.
Your representative owes you not his industry only, but his judgment. And he betrays, instead of serving you, if he sacrifices it to your opinion.
Interesting.
So sometimes, we have people who come in and they have very strong opinions, but they're only talking to people who have the same opinion that they have. Mm-hmm. And they don't go out and look and say, well, what are the problems that we face now? What is it that we need to do? What's going on, not just in Midland, but in the state and in the country and in the world. You have to take a look at all of that and do your best. And I would say pray, to make good decisions.
Well, you stepped up and you are our leader. You're the mayor of Midland. What gave you the courage to do that and to step out into that role where you put yourself in a position where you're leading, but you're also having to manage all these dynamics? It's very brave to do that, I feel.
Okay, I'm not, well, thank you for saying that was brave. I ran for council. That was not really something that was a lifelong.
When was that?
I ran in 2007.
Okay, so you started as serving on the city council.
Right, in 2007.
And then you've been doing that
since 2007.
Yeah.
Yes. And our terms are 2 years, so we're up for election every 2 years. So this year I'm up for election again.
Mm-hmm.
And we have a council manager form of government.
Mm-hmm.
So
what does that mean?
Well, cities typically have one of two forms of government, either a strong mayor form of government or a council manager form of government. So if you think of a strong mayor form of government, you can think of Rochester Hills, Detroit, Chicago, New York, larger cities. Okay. And they elect the mayor runs the city. In a council manager form of government, you elect a council, and the council hires a professional to run the city. And that professional reports to us. So we have our city manager, Brad Kay, and he is our city manager, does a great job. John Lynch, you had on, he was our city manager. I got to work with John when he was in the planning department. It's probably one of the reasons why I ran, because I knew him, and he had become the city manager, and the current person who was representing Ward 2 wasn't going to run again. And I thought, maybe I've been on multiple boards, and this would be something different. And I thought I would try that. So in Midland, let me just say, we have cities divided into 5 wards with about an equal number of registered voters. So each ward elects a representative. So I represent Ward 2.
Okay.
And then as the mayor is elected by the fellow council members. After the council is elected, then they elect who they want to be mayor. Now, every council or every city has a charter, and the charter determines how you're going to do that. So Bay City and Saginaw, they have council managers form of government also, but they do it differently. Like their mayor is elected at large. So it just depends what their charter says. But that's how our charter says it will work. It will work. The mayor and the mayor pro tem will be elected the first meeting after the election.
And oftentimes the mayor for Midland is also a city council member. So,
yes.
So you're a voting member,
yes.
And there's 5 members.
Yes.
And those rotate every 2 years.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and we have my vote is no better than anyone else's vote. It's equal power in those votes. So my job is really to be the spokesperson for the city.
Right.
That's really my job. In addition to representing my ward.
And how is the school board? Is this a little different? Is that a separate entity?
Yes, I really can't. Yes, it is.
Okay,
we can talk about that a little bit because it is. I mean, they're one of our partners. We have lots of community partners, and the school board. You're elected to the school board, and they have an election coming up too, and you make decisions for the school. And of course, they elect. They determine and hire a superintendent then basically to run the school, and they have to do all the planning for that organization. So I think you should have, Penny Miller Nelson come on the show because they have a lot going on for sure. And I think she would be a good person for you to talk to.
Well, Penny Miller Nelson was my second client 15 years ago when I started real estate. So I don't know if she remembers that, but I remember her. I'm very proud of her for winning that election recently, and now she's leading that. So that's wonderful.
Yeah, she is. I
also have a lot of pals on the school board as well, Blazy and some other guys that are I admire people who serve in local government because it's a service and it's not easy, and there's a lot of time and energy and effort and bandwidth that's taken from stepping up and reputation risk and letting some people down and making some people happy, but trying to do what's right for the city. I admire that. I think it's very special that people do that, and not a lot of people do it.
True.
That's how I feel.
I think that's true, and it's I don't know. I would have to say that it has been a very rewarding thing for me. I've got to meet wonderful people. I've, got to help people accomplish, some meaningful goals. And most importantly, I love this community. And I want Midland to be the best place it possibly can be. And I, like many people who grew up here, never thought they would be back here. But it's the best thing I think that has ever, happened to me. And I'm glad I've been able to raise my family here. And I have wonderful friends here. And Midland is a community of great people who have great ideas and are not afraid to work towards making those things happen. And I think that is our history as a community.
Speaking of which, let's discuss neighboring.
Okay. Neighboring.
Tell me about this.
Well, this is something that started in Midland back in 2011. And Linda Owen, did you know her? Had gone, was out visiting relatives, I think, in Colorado. And she attended church out there. And she brought this idea back and went right to John Lynch, who was city manager at the time, and told him about it. And said, I got to tell you about this very cool neighboring thing I just experienced. And what it was in Colorado, the churches grouped together and they all preached the same sermon like 3 Sundays in a row. So if you were Methodist, you heard the same sermon that the Baptists were hearing or the Catholics were hearing or the Assembly of God folks were hearing. And so if you went outside, that afternoon after church and were, raking grass in your yard and you talked to your neighbor and said, I heard this nice thing about I should, meet my neighbor. And they said, well, I heard the same thing. And so Linda thought that was a great idea. Well, she talked to John, and John said, Maureen, I think you should look into this. So I did. And so these 2 ministers in Colorado, I found out from Linda who they were. They had written a book, and it was Rediscovering the Art of Neighboring. And basically it was based on the principle, if you're supposed to love your neighbor, you got to know who your neighbor is. And so we in Midland brought churches. I worked with Wally Mayton,
I know Wally.
One well-known guy, and said, what do you think? Do you think we could do this? And we invited folks to come to City Hall and had a conversation and said, this isn't about building your congregation. It's about building our community. What's your thoughts? Would you be interested? And they said, yes. So we brought Dave Runyon from Colorado to come and talk with them. And for years, the faith-based community really led that work on neighboring. And it was wonderful, and people loved it. And I think it's one of the things that makes Midland a special place to live. So there was a study that was done back in 2010 by the Knight Foundation. And it's called The Soul of the Community, Why People Love Where They Live and Why Does It Matter. And Knight Foundation, or Knight Company, owns newspapers across the country. So in Michigan, they own the Detroit Free Press. So they surveyed 43,000 people in 26 communities across the country. They partnered with Gallup to do that. And they identified why people attach to the communities in which they live. So they identified the top 10 attributes. And consistently across all of those communities, the top 3 attributes were welcoming community, offering of services, and aesthetics. It wasn't things like economic development or education. I mean, they were in there, but they weren't the top 3. Those were the top 3 consistently. So if you think about things that we have been focusing on in Midland, so I say, okay, we are in a valley, kind of in the middle of a cornfield. We are not Holland, Michigan, or Traverse City, or Aspen, Colorado. We have to create all our own beauty. So, we now have beautification awards. We work very hard. We have the flowers up and down Eastman Avenue. We decorate, downtown. Those are really important things. And we have to create that beauty because we know that that's one of the reasons why people love where they live.
Yeah.
And then offering of services. Well, we need to make sure we have places where people can gather and meet other people like themselves. And then this concept of welcoming. Well, the best way to be welcoming is to start doing it right in your own neighborhoods by meeting your neighbor. So that's why we think neighboring is really important. We developed a neighboring day. It's the 28th of September. It's National Neighboring Day. And we just kind of attached the week around that and said, hey, just think about, being a better neighbor and meet your neighbor. And this year we had some wonderful things. We were able to give away some $100 grants to folks if they wanted to do a neighboring party to help them fund that. And we have signs this year that we hope people will put in their yards just to say, hey, Midland neighboring. And they can keep from year to year because we hope to be doing this every year here in Midland.
So this is a newer priority that's just starting now in terms of marketing it and getting it out?
Well,
because you've been doing it for
we've been doing it for a long time. But every year we try to do it better. Okay. How can we market it better? So we have, here's some information on neighboring. And we had these wonderful little magnets one year. And it it was like a 9 block, and it had houses in it, and it said, your house is in the middle. These are your neighbors. Write your neighbors down in there. So you could put that magnet on your refrigerator, and, it would be something, a conversation starter in the neighborhood. So we've been trying to do things better. We have a whole neighboring toolkit. We have, sheets that you can use with children to draw things, chalk ideas. Lots of different ideas are in that kit to help people, get out and meet their neighbors.
Where can people get that?
They can go right online. They can just Google like Midland neighboring, and it will come right up.
Okay. As I'm listening to you and the priorities that you have identified over the past dozen or so years, you can see them everywhere in town. You mentioned the Eastman Avenue corridor with the flowers, and that's right in front of our office. And every year since as I've been a child here, I've remembered that and admired that. But also several years ago, there was a big initiative to put new signage across the city, and that was very expensive.
Yes.
And there was a lot of pushback on that, if you recall. I remember.
Yes, and that was a whole committee. I mean, a lot of this stuff does not happen in government. It happens in people who are interested in that outside of, City Hall, who come together and work on it, and we play a role in that, but we don't do it all. So it's Midland.
How does that happen? We just have wonderful people that are willing to contribute, or how does it work?
I think it is part of our DNA. I think that, I can go right back to Native Americans. I get little people say, oh, don't get her started. And if you think about that, we were at our rivers, our rivers were the highways. That's how Native Americans traveled. They got in their canoes, they came down, they did trapping, hunting, and then they would go back. And once in that trapping and hunting business then became huge. And then we had the logging industry people came here because, they came here, they created, they built, and they gave back. So the logging industry started. Well, unfortunately, the concept of sustainability, I don't even think it was a word back then. They cut down all the trees, and it was like, what next? Well, fortunately for us, Herbert Dow came to Midland with an idea and a vision. Yeah. And he was not just building a business. He was also building the community in which they wanted to live. So we are very fortunate because we have that mindset here, because those folks that were building that business, they took their wealth that they made, they created foundations that have lived on to our time now and will live on forever, because they just were very generous, but they were also building their community. And I think that has just become part of who we are as a city.
I agree, and I'm very grateful to be here, living here. And it's so nice to see that investment, that sustainable investment over all these decades and centuries almost of philanthropy and generosity and stewardship, frankly, managing them properly and keeping our city, our services, our streets, our communities, our parks so beautiful. And then being able to make investments like that in conjunction with the city, which has a limited budget, which is based on taxes. You can only spend so much and you can only raise so much, and you already have your services that are locked in that you have to have. So other people have to contribute and help out to make our community even more beautiful.
Well, we have a lot of blessings. I'm just going to say we have a lot of blessings, and we can never take that for granted.
Speaking of blessings, can we talk about the Reese endeavor?
Yes.
I know that's near and dear to your heart.
It is.
Can you tell us what that is and exactly how it works?
Sure. The Reese Endeavor, we're a nonprofit that provides housing for individuals with developmental disabilities and cognitive impairments. So actually, it was started by an individual, but it was started by Florence Reese. She had 3 children, one of whom had Down syndrome, and her husband suddenly passed away. And she was a mother who had to go back to work, and her only choice was to put her son, into an institution. Oh. And so that was, years ago, and that's not what anybody hopes for if you have a child. Mm-hmm. And they were looking at how could we do this differently, but knew it would take a long time. And it did. That was in 1957 that happened. Wow. So in the 1970s, deinstitutionalization started, and people were being sent back to the communities where they came from, and that's when foster care started, foster care homes. And individuals, again, were living in homes in congregate settings here in Midland. And the David Reese House was the very first foster care home here in Midland. It was located on the corner of Carpenter and Eastman Avenue, and that was our very first home. Since then, we now own 41 homes, and we have actually last year sold the David Reed's house because it wasn't a model that was working for us, and it was just a fortuitous conversation, and we sold the house to the Open Door, and it is now their women's shelter.
Right.
But we own 41 homes, and so we have been building here when we have the finances to do that. Most recently, we just built 3 houses with the building trade students over on the Cambridge and Ashman Curve, and that was great for us. And those are duplexes, and we serve about 90 people who are able to live independently with support in the community.
So much positivity going on there. I was getting my haircut at Cooper & Co. yesterday, and I was looking across through the window at those buildings, and I was talking to Ethan, who knows you very well, and he mentioned that those were recent ever developments, but also in conjunction with building trades with the high school?
Yes. So actually, that was a project that John Lynch, he was in planning, and they were building homes and then selling them. And we had a conversation, well, what if we built a house, but we used your plan?
Oh.
We were like, well, okay, if we just have the money to pay for it when it's done, that will work really well. And so we designed the plan. The city oversees the project, and the building trades kids do it. And the very first house that we did, the property was a gift to us from Memorial Presbyterian Church. Someone had left it to them. So they gave us 2 pieces, one piece of property, which was ours, and then Habitat built a structure on the property next door, and which was really... So that was our first building project. And which was very cool about that is the students also learned why they were building things a certain way. Why were the doors wider than normal? Because our homes are all universal design. So we were the first group building universal design, zero entry, homes here in Midland. So, the other builders would come and look at what was being done there. So that was our first. It was a house. And so since then, we've had a total of 7 projects with the building trades kids.
I think those are exciting. I've been watching those for the last few years as well. I think teaching young kids skilled trades and leveraging that opportunity with something on the back end that's from the heart is wonderful.
Yeah, and they'd say, well, their parents would come during the parade of homes, and they go, well, we have to build these, the doors have to be wider because they might have a wheelchair.
Right.
This bathroom they might need a roll-in shower. So the counters are low because, they're in wheelchairs again. So all these great conversations, and kids were then explaining it to their parents. And they saw, and they see folks then with disabilities in a whole, different light and understand, some of the issues that they might face.
And the Recent Ever is funded with donations.
Yes.
The Midland Board of Realtors just had a golf outing.
They did.
And the Recent Ever was the beneficiary of the golf outing sponsorship, which we were proud to have contributed to, and the Board of Realtors locally has tried to make an impact there as they could.
I'm not a golfer, but I had the best time that day, and it was fun. Even though it was raining, we were just so surprised and honored that they chose us as their charity. And I can promise you, we'll put that money, to good use. We will put that towards our next house. We only build when we have enough cash to pay for the house.
I was going to ask you that. So the homes that are constructed are built using funds from donations.
Yeah.
Once you get to a level where you can purchase and build the whole property without a mortgage, without financing, and then how do you apply or how do you get involved if you need some help with Recent Ever?
Well, so in the disability community, people know us. So, people say, do you have a waiting list? And the answer is no, because when you need a house, you need a house. And we won't have an opening right away. So once we have it, so if someone moves out of one of our homes, we work with Community Mental Health. Okay. That's the clearing organization. You have to be receiving services from Community Mental Health to live in one of our homes. They have support. They have, supervisors who will then let their folks know that there's an opening coming up. If you have anyone that you're supporting that is ready to live out in community, then they'll contact us. And, so we've learned a lot along the way and, how to do this better. So it's really on a first come, first served basis for us that whoever contacts us first, if they have the staff that can support them, then they're able to live in one of our homes. So this model was actually a model that started before I started at the Reese Endeavor, and it was called supported community living. That individuals with disabilities can live in community if they have the support to be successful. So our homes provide a sense of independence. It provides them a way of engaging in the broader community and, a sense of accomplishment. And we are so thrilled, about the folks that we serve and the partnerships that we have, because we are the landlord, and then there's organizations that provide the services for the folks that live in our houses.
Arnold Center?
Arnold Center is a different support. They provide some support, but they're also a place where people can go and learn skills.
Okay, so
and I'm on the Arnold Center board. My son actually works for Dow, but has an office at the Arnold Center, and he does his work there, which is great. It's a great space for him. They get him, and it's, I think we just have many wonderful organizations that provide services to help people be successful.
Who are some that come to mind?
Well, certainly the Arnold Center. I would say the advocacy organization is the ARC of Midland. We have personal assistance options. We have Voice of Midland. We have Independent Community Living. We have Christian Home Services. Those are all some of the organizations that provide, the service, the support for the individuals living in the homes. But all so they're the ones who do that work, and we work with them.
It's a tremendously rich and dense population of nonprofit enterprises in Midland that are helpful, I think.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's just my perspective, but that's how I feel strongly.
Well, I think people, if they have a passion, they kind of go after it.
Yeah, around here anyway.
Yeah, yes, for sure. And, people, in most communities, it's congregate living. You have to live in an adult foster care home. So this vision that came out of, what was a sad situation, and it was families, working together to bring that around. And so it was the ARC of Midland Community Mental Health and the Reese Endeavor back before I ever started there. And they received an award, a national award for this concept of supported community living, which is really very exciting for Midland.
Midland has really... I feel anyway, has done a good job of coming back from the flood damage that we had a few years ago, and we're still dealing with all the lingering effects of the rebuilding of the dams and things like that, and now how that's going to affect everything. But what do you see in the near future in terms of development and growth for Midland, and maybe something that's important to you or something that you feel we need? Or what do you see in the next maybe 4 or 5 years coming down the road that would make Midland even more wonderful?
That's a tough question. We are recovering from that. I think, certainly the flood of 2017, that was bad. Then 2020, that was worse. Mm-hmm. I think, we talk a lot about what do we need to do to be resilient. Mm-hmm. Because we could go hundreds of years before we ever have another flood again. It's one of those things you have no control over and just don't know. But we have to be, better prepared at the level of which we can afford to be prepared. So, we cannot be prepared for the, 10,000-year flood for sure. We will prepare the best way we possibly can. So we have, again, this is Midland. Yeah. It is people working together to, to make things happen. And we've been very fortunate. We learned a lot going through the flood, because really when you're talking about dollars, and it's cost a lot of money. Yeah. And where is that money going to come from? Right. And which none of us really were aware of. And I think we were very fortunate that Bill Schutte educated us on that, we were really competing with every community who has a tragedy, if it's the forest fires in California or the hurricanes in Louisiana. Those dollars are federal dollars that you need, you're competing against those communities for. So you have to know how to do that. And he and some others, formed a group who helped raise some money to hire us attorneys that would help us understand the appropriations committee. Mm-hmm. And that's the kind of blessings that we have. That's someone who did that out of the goodness of their heart, and local Midland people helped fund that so we could have that expertise and have what we needed to get those dollars. So I think that is a very exciting piece for us. Now it's time. It's everything. It's time. How long? It takes forever. Everything takes forever. And so I think that slow and steady wins the race, and we will, continue to go down the road doing the best we can, making the decisions. And for all of us, it's I think it's about learning patience.
Well, part of what we're talking about is infrastructure.
Yes.
And this summer especially, it seems like all the streets are getting repaved this summer. There are so many projects going on, Eastman Avenue and all different streets, side streets, main streets. That in and of itself is a logistical challenge, and it's an incredible long-term budget, capital expenditure plan. It seems like a lot of the streets have really had some good overhauls in the last couple of years.
Sure. Well, roads are interesting.
Yeah.
And in Michigan, we have a road issue. Yeah. So first of all, we have tough winters. They wreak havoc with roads. We have a short building season, and we're all competing now for the same people to build the roads. So it's really very competitive. So in Midland, yes, there's been a lot going on. One, because of some of the work we're doing around sewer backup.
Yes.
In certain areas of town. So we've had to rip the roads out to put in the infrastructure that was needed, and then, the new roads on top of that. So if you looked at Sylvan Lane, we put in that 1 million gallon tank for sewer retention during, should something happen, and now we're just putting in all new infrastructure because our infrastructure is under the roads.
Right.
And you don't want us to say, oh, let's fix that road, and then go, oops, now we got to rip it out because we need new infrastructure. So we have done things to understand exactly what we have underneath the road. So we have put robots and cameras through everything, so we know where, what's in bad shape and what it is, so we can, address those issues. So roads are costly, and, some of the roads are really bad. They're bad. I'm not going to say they're not, because it's not what you wish for. And there's, to put a road in, we're not going to put a road in today that we know in 4 years we're going to replace the infrastructure. So we're going to live with the bad roads until we do the infrastructure and the road itself.
Well, it's a process. It's a several-year process. Yeah.
It is, and it's, roads are what people see. See, we all want those roads. We want to get to the point where we have great roads. But we don't get a lot of money for roads. Those are our dollars paying for those. So
the roads are paid by tax dollars, so they have to be budgeted. They have to be forecasted.
Yes, we do have a millage. We have a road millage, so that definitely helps with that. But it does take time. It takes time. And, there's a whole system where you would look at, okay, if we do this, this will prolong how long the road will last. Now, some of those systems we've just gotten rid of because they were also people didn't like. We had this one where they would put this slurry of stuff down on the road, and then they put gravel on it, and then you're driving down the road and it's not hitting your car, it's making a mess. It was just a mess. And then, it would take weeks, but then the road, would get back to normal, and it would somewhat prolong the road. But we had so much pushback on that it's not something will do. So we will go to a mill and fill process, which means what you have to do when the road is still looking good. Once a road is dead, it's dead. So you need to do that before it gets too bad, and then it will continue to prolong the life of the road. So sometimes it looks like, well, that road, what was wrong with that road? Why'd they do that? It was looking really good, but we needed to do that so we would get another 10 more years out of it or more. So I'm not a road expert. I was going to almost say I wish I was, but I really don't wish I was. But it is something that is important to everybody, and we know that.
Sure. Speaking of roads, we had Selena Tisdale recently on the show, and she had mentioned some potential changes down at the Circle.
Yes.
Are those in the plan?
Those
or still coming later?
I think that's mentioned in the plan. So we've been working on this for a long time. Again, that goes back to the time when Fred Kett was here, actually, because the Circle was one of those areas. And the Circle is our second oldest business district.
Yeah.
And if we look at what happened, again, down at Main Street when we invested there, we know that, it's time for the Circle to be invested in. Those guys are 20-mile marchers. They have worked really, really hard, those businesses along that road. And so the work that we've recently done, I know that some people are not, they don't, why did you do those sidewalks? We don't like those sidewalks. I don't see anyone on those sidewalks. Well, we know that once you invest in an area, then we'll get more investment in that area. And that's proven to be true downtown, and we believe it'll be proven to be true, again, down in our Center City area. Because one of the things that happened there was we had to become an authority. So we had to organize everyone along that district, which took years. And fortunately for us, the chamber took that process on. But when you look at all of those, many of those are big box stores. So many of the business owners don't live here, unlike downtown. So it's a really different kind of environment. But many communities have, a district like that. So we had to organize all of them to become a tax instrument financing area. So we could start capturing taxes that could be spent in that area alone.
I think that's a great thing.
Me too.
I go down there all the time.
Okay.
My little kiddo's taking music lessons down there.
Oh yeah, nice.
Nice. There's a lot of nice little businesses going in there, and it is a tough corridor to run a business in, because just with the traffic, you want more traffic, and there's a lot of through traffic. But I think any change or adjustment there is a good vision for the future.
Right, and I think sometimes it's hard to think about the future because you're living in the present, and and why do I want to do that? That's going to inconvenience me, or I don't like that. But I think it is our responsibility to think about the future and what it is we want to be, because now is our time to build that. Now is the time. And so I think that's the tough part, because not everybody agrees on that, and the council will have to manage that. We'll have to, look at what the plans are, see what kind of ideas we can come up with, and how we're going to pay for them, and it'll take a long time. But you can do it. Well, it's not me; it's everyone. It is a community-wide effort. So we need the community to share their thoughts on that, and to also think about something that they may not have thought of before. So what is the Well-Being Coalition? Well, the Well-Being Coalition it really actually started back in 2017. We had a project with the University of Pennsylvania, which teaches applied positive psychology. And at that time, if you think about what was going on in Midland in 2017, Dow just had acquired Dow Corning. Then they said they were going to merge with DuPont. And I think everybody went, what the heck does that mean? This is, holy goodness, this is not, what do we do? And, I was thinking about it. I was up at night going, okay, what do you do when a company downsizes? And I found things like, get an abandoned building and turn it into an art center. I thought, well, we got an art center. We have a great art center. How do we make people feel confident in their community and willing to, keep moving forward? And so the Rock had a program with Penn, and they were chosen. And I had heard Bev Wenzel speak about it, and I said, oh my gosh, this is it. And so it was really about how you develop, how do you have a life worth living? What is it? What are the components of a life worth living? And really, a city doesn't control that all for you, or business doesn't control it. So how do you really do it yourself? So I applied to Penn to be one of their projects. And I think the best thing that came, I said, I really don't know what I'm applying for, but I can tell you, here's what's going on. How can we help our community do this? So what came out of that was, how do we develop an approach that would build well-being, helping residents become citizens, enhance community connections, create a more welcoming place for diverse populations? So that's what, one of the things we want to do in our community. So the coalition is a group of people. And so we got selected. 3 of us went and watched the presentation at Penn, and I said, wow. I mean, I get this, but I have to tell you, I'm not the brightest bulb in the box, and I have to be around people who are talking about this, and we're all working on the same thing. How do we make that happen? So we were able to raise money to train 50 people to go through a well-being course. So we brought in an outside presenter. We spent 6 months, going one weekend a month, and it was, both days, and we were getting all this training in well-being science. Wow. And so then the Well-Being Coalition has just evolved after that. So it's really about, how do you, about feeling good, struggling well, and functioning effectively. How do we do that? So it's really focused on individuals, but once you focus on individuals, it also becomes part of the community itself. How do we do that? How do we, function? How do we struggle well as a community? And so the Wellbeing Coalition is supporting all of that work, and we now have a leader, Kathy Snyder, who is leading that work for us. We've got a grant from the Michigan Health Endowment Fund to help replicate this work in other communities. And that's the work we're doing in Midland.
Kathy Snyder brought this to Modern Realty.
She did. Yay.
She did. I remember it very well. It was very impactful.
Yes. Yes.
I love that.
Yes. So that's what we're doing, and we're continuing to do that work and, helping our community. I mean, it's not always going to be easy for us. So how do we struggle well? How do we do this? And how do we, act effectively when we're going through that?
I think that's wonderful. What a time to invest in something like that during 2017 when there was a lot of uncertainty in our economy and our community's future with the different changes with Dow and things like that. And I remember your leadership at that time very well, actually, because it was certainly a scary time for real estate people when we didn't know what, if there was going to be mass home sales or the market was going to shift, and we didn't know what the future of Midland's community would look like with the employment. And so for you to take that action and spend all that energy and effort to try to bring some positivity back into town, I think that's really admirable.
It's a group. Let me just say, it's very definitely a group effort. And I think if you're focused on the right things fall into place.
Yes.
And that's all I can say about that. I mean, because I don't think it would have worked if it was not the right thing to do. It was the right time, the right place, the right thing.
Thanks for doing that.
Well, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
I want to know what made you even start having a podcast?
Well, that's a great question. I love Midland. Mm-hmm. I love real estate. I love small business. So those are three things that are very passionate to me. And I wanted to have a platform where I could get to know more of the leaders in Midland, more of the movers and the shakers like you, the ones with the vision to continue to improve Midland. I grew up here. I took the chance of opening a small business here. As you know, we're coming up on our 10th year in business next July, which is a monumental achievement for me personally, just to be able to have made payroll for 10 years in a row. We have hundreds of past clients from Midland. Our friends and family are our clients that are buy and sell houses here. So when you're in real estate and you help people buy and sell houses, you watch their different phases of their lives and you start to build relationships, and you see people's development, and where that happens becomes very important to you. So Midland has always been very important to me. That's why I call it Talk Midland, because I just love this community. And I really earnestly mean that when I say I love Midland. I love living here, raising a family here. I love the community here, and I want what's best for Midland. And so having a chance to speak with people like you and other leaders in our community is very meaningful to me. And I admire the ones that are stepping up and doing the things that are hard and leading our beautiful community. And I want to be a part of that and support that in any way I can. So that's why I did it.
Awesome. Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate that. I wasn't, as I said, I'm not really sure what to expect, but this has been a fun conversation for me, and it really does take all of us working together to make Midland a great place. So I appreciate your passion around that, and helping people share their thoughts and ideas. So thanks for the invitation.
Mayor Donker, thank you for being on the Talk Midland podcast.
Okay, thanks for having me.